welcome to Thoughtseize Interviews, the show where we seize the thoughts of our guests while playing games of Magic the Gathering. I'm Lucas Frank. With me, as always, is my co-host, Zachary Cole-Smith, and today we're joined by Alexis Marshall of Daughters. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Alexis, we have a Magic the Gathering themed talk show here, and I wanted to ask if you are familiar with Magic the Gathering at all.
I've never played, but when I first moved to Providence, my roommate was really into Magic the Gathering, and I harassed him about it frequently. But probably because it's just beyond me, I don't understand it.
You were just consumed with envy about how cool he was.
Yeah, jealousy and rage.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so on this show, we try to build decks that have some kind of theme related to like the artist or their work or something like that. So this week, Lucas and I really wanted to play this deck, and so we made it work for you guys. So with Daughters, you released a record called "You Won't Get What You Want." So today, our opponents also won't get what they want because we're playing this Grixis control deck. We've got it's a bad deck that Lucas and I are both really passionate about. So a couple cards. That record has a track called Ocean Song. So we have here our islands out in the ocean. There's a song called Flammable Man. Right here we have Dreadbore, a man who is flammable and currently on fire. And then you may or may not have an upcoming song called Hounds in the Abyss. So we have here Luris of the Dream Den, a hound in the abyss. So there we go. Let's fire her up.
Alexis, has the world of sci-fi, fantasy, or gaming entered yours at all? Your world at all?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I grew up, watching the horror films and Twilight Zone and things like that. So, but gaming not so much. I think I played like video games the way a lot of like young kids in the 80s did, getting into, like Nintendo shows up and everybody's got to have a Nintendo, and then Sega shows up, you get a Genesis. So I mean, that was kind of the extent. And then after that, I didn't. When I had dislocated my shoulder on a number of occasions several years ago, and I finally had surgery, and I bought a PlayStation 2. I think it was a PlayStation 2 at the time, or whatever number they were on. And I bought a couple games, and I tried to play them, and it was just too hard. I couldn't do it.
There's a steep learning curve for sure.
Yeah,
you were telling.
It's like half an hour just to get to the game. There's like so much going on. There's like an intro and all this stuff, and I didn't have I could sit down and play for a little bit, and I gave up.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You were telling us about something prior to this, before we went live, that sounded interesting. What was that?
So it's called Hero Clicks. It's similar to the way Warhammer has the figures, but they're superheroes. They're comic book characters, and so DC has their own brand of it, and Marvel, and then there's like an indie series that would have like Hellboy and Goon and characters in it. So I played that for a couple years. And would hang out with a couple guys, Sam, who was a bass player, played bass and Daughters for a long time, and a couple other people. And we would meet at my house like once a week and play. We get drunk and play Hero Clicks. And, you've got a board and you roll a dice. I think, or everyone has a certain amount of movements, and then they have a battle on the board. And every time a guy takes damage, it's a certain amount of clicks, and then it changes.
You have a little figurine that you're moving around the board?
You have a small figure. You put a team together. You set a point total. Everybody's worth one character like Punisher might be worth 75 points, and then a Spider-Man's worth 110 points, and then you put a whole team together. You set a point of 1,000 points per team or something, and you put a team together that meets the point limit, and then as players hit each other, they take clicks of damage, it's called, and then you click the character, and then their stats go down until eventually they die, and then whoever's the last man standing type thing.
Sounds like magic. Are you a comic book guy?
I was for a long time. I was as a kid, and then I got back into it when I was handed a graphic novel of what was it called? Kingdom Come, that Alex Ross had done. I don't remember if he wrote it. Maybe like Mark Waid or somebody. I don't know who wrote it, but Alex Ross did the art, and it was like really gorgeous stuff. And it kind of brought.
I shouldn't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
I'm not a big fan.
Well, in scouring the internet for just daughters' info and interviews and stuff, we kind of noticed this weird thing that's happening with daughters' press, where there are these sort of old heads who want to wax nostalgia with you, and in that regard, shout out Hal Capone. That guy seems super fucking cool, and I love that interview. The first, 10 minutes of the interview on YouTube, he's just kind of sitting there waiting for you to get there, and that was super, I sincerely can't recommend that interview enough for, talking about the good old days type interview. But then there's also this sort of, new fan base, like the Anthony Fantano Zoomers that have there's an influx of younger people. And in the interviews, you seem to be constantly in this position where you're having to respectfully bring things back to the present, acknowledge your past and how that's important to people, but bring the conversation back to today. How do you manage people's admiration for a part of your life that you'd maybe like to leave behind?
I mean, I can't manage that. I just got to do my best to focus on what we're doing now, and I understand the nostalgia, and I appreciate that there were people listening to us 20 years ago. Not that there were that many, because we did a lot of touring, and it didn't seem like anybody was showing up. So, but and it can be cool, especially now that I'm sober, because I'll meet people that I met 15 years ago, and I don't remember I don't even remember being in that city or something like that. So it can be interesting to talk about that kind of shit, and I do appreciate that people are sticking with us, because I think it takes a lot to follow a band like us around, similar to with like a band like Ceremony, where they're now so much different than they were. with their first record, and you got to appreciate when people stick around and are willing to follow you through this like transformation. So I dig that, but I think more for me, it's not a like need to like forget about that past because it's overwhelming or not marketable or something. For me, it's just like I just don't give a shit about those records. I really don't care about them, and we weren't that good, and the lyrics aren't very good, and there's so much of it I don't care for. So I just feel that aside from the nostalgic aspects of it, there's not a lot to talk about for me anyway. And I know that some people they dig that and want to dwell there, and that's cool, but that's just not for me.
So, you have talked pretty extensively about this, but I wanted just to talk for a second about music journalism. I read an interview with you where, you said, I think a lot of music journalism is based around a lot of cowardice right now. Maybe they're not particularly creative people, and then they judge creativity. I read that this is the subject of the song "The Reason They Hate Me," but what do you feel like is the role of music writing or music criticism in 2021? Like, an era where it's quicker to just listen to the music than it is to read about it, but also one where tech companies like Spotify have transformed the the age-old practice of music recommendation into this like algorithmic tech-driven artifice that's just like perpetuating the indoctrination of the corporate status quo. So like, given this, what do you feel is the role of music criticism in 2021, and can good music writing be a possible counter to this?
I think there's probably good music journalism out there, but I don't really pay attention. So, I mean, I like the Fantano. I think like Fantano gets a bad rep because of his sort of a lot of young audiences and whatever his bullshit is. I don't know, but he's more interested in giving kind of like the who, what, where, and how of like what a record is, as opposed to telling you how you're supposed to feel about it or what you should think about it. And I wish there were more people who were really interested in analysis and kind of listening to music and not in a sense of trying to be a critic and saying what bands should be doing or shouldn't be doing, because who's to decide that shit? Certainly not someone who's just kind of doesn't understand the creative processes, know what it's like to put a lot of yourself into something and then and see it either succeed or fail. If you're sitting around and like talking about this record and the next record and the next record and doing like hundreds of reviews at a time, it's just like, you don't really, there's nothing to be gained or lost for someone who's critical of other people's work. So, but I don't know, again, I don't know a lot about, music journalism or criticism or anything right now. I probably maybe have like an archaic, like a Hemingway-esque type of feelings about it, where like if you give me a bad review, I want to go and punch you in the nose or some shit. Like that's sort of. So I mean I think like when I wrote Reason, it was a lot like I was probably a little angry and thinking about things and probably pissed that like Pitchfork never gave a shit about it. So I mean, who knows what I was feeling that day, but I do have. It's not a disdain because I wouldn't even give it that much weight in my life. But I do think that it's all a bunch of bullshit at the end of the day. And if you want to hear something, you should listen. It only takes a few minutes to kind of flip through a catalog and get a feel for what's happening. And I think people should do that and decide what they're into and that's why I do appreciate what Fantano does with he's just like kind of gives everything a listen and discusses it honestly and doesn't tell you what you should think about it and just says what he thinks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that while I agree that there's nothing to be lost for the music critic from doing all that, writing about artists, there is something to be gained for them in the sense that like they kind of, are profiting off of, at times destroying a young artist's career or just sitting around trashing young artists, which I think makes it even worse at times.
Yeah, they insert themselves into the story. It's like, this is my scoop. I'm the one that finally took down, big daughters or whatever. It's like, fuck you,
Yeah, there's certainly, and that's part of like, what I think I was trying to get across another interview about whatever the hell I was fucking talking about. That, yeah, there's some envy. And not necessarily jealousy. So, and envy, I think, are a bit different. Envy's like, if I can't have this, no one should have it.
Right.
So, like, if I don't like this, no one's gonna like it. And I think that a lot of it is people who are afraid to be critiqued themselves, so they won't put anything out. They'll just kind of sit around and again, like they talk about so much shit. It's like they don't need to focus on anything or anywhere. They talk about this thing and then they move right on. It's sort of like it's like people's opinions when somebody doesn't like you, and then you end up sitting up all night. Someone, like, you read the comments on some fucking YouTube or something, and then somebody says you look like an asshole, and you'll be like, you spend all night just like, I'm not an asshole. This guy's an asshole.
Right.
Just like it doesn't help you at all. And like they've moved on to, they're 100 comments on to the next thing at this point. So.
Right. It's like that. But they're like, this is the definitive take because I am a professional with these credentials, and my definitive take is like, this thing is bad. It's like a YouTube comment with like, a college degree or whatever. That's my issue there.
Yeah.
The fucking definitiveness. Anyway.
Yeah. If you don't agree, if you don't like it, there's something wrong with you, and it's bullshit. It's a lot of meaningless. It's all meaningless.
The capitalist model for music seems to pressure its artists to live in the past in a way that no other model can compare to. By that I mean artists outside the music business are given the opportunity to make something and then try and leave it behind them, whereas musicians have to tour off songs from their early career for the rest of their lives. Like when Paul Thomas Anderson premieres a new film, the audience isn't screaming like, play Magnolia, and like in each of your interviews, those talking with you are excited to discuss your past, and we touched on this already a little bit, and you're happy to engage in that discussion. And but I've noticed like you said, you don't give a shit about those albums. There's sort of a certain amount of disdain for the old iterations of your work. And you've mentioned that even today, as you're turning in final versions of a piece of work, you're making last minute edits. Do you have trouble accepting older versions of yourself? And if you could erase the old work, would you? There's a lot of questions here. And is the newest version of Alexis the only one worth listening to you? And then I have a question about the solo project to add to like those five questions.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of stuff. I'm not quite sure where to.
Just take a stab at it anywhere. It doesn't really matter.
Anything?
Yeah, it just doesn't
what
matter.
Stood out, I feel like I'm listening to a share at a meeting right now. What really was with no one's yelling yet at Paul Thomas Anderson to play the old film, but it's a really interactive medium, being a musician and playing, and it's not there's constant movement. We're all in it together, and everyone, and you can touch the person. It's not like you can't reach. When I was a kid, I went to see my dad took me to see maybe one of the only good things he ever did for me. He took me to see Return of the Jedi, and he allowed me to go up to I wanted to go touch the screen, and he brought me up to the front of the theater, and I was touching the film screen, and people were shouting, and it was a whole scene. But that you can go and touch the person on stage. I mean, especially a band like ours, where there's really no line between, and if there's a barrier, it's crossed regularly. So Yeah, it's far more interactive, and people feel a connection to it and can tell you how they feel about it. Play this song. This is my favorite song. I need to hear this song. It's gonna, they'll pull their hair out or something for you or whatever it is, and it's you get to see that in as it unfolds in that moment. So it's a lot different than you want to see a film where this has been created. It stands on its own, and you just sit there and you view it. The same with a record. Once it's made, you can sit at home, and if that's the experience you want to have and just listen to a record, then be my guest. But as a performer, I think that there's far more than hearing that song you really like, and it should be more about everybody connecting in some way, emotionally or physically or artistically or whatever it is. So, and since I talked for so long about that, I have absolutely no idea anything else that you said.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm going to press you on it. But that's such a fantastic
go to college
answer.
or finish high school, so you please don't say anything that's so smart that I'm going to look incredibly stupid.
No, that was such a great answer. I didn't go to college either. Barely finished high school, so I couldn't if I wanted to. And I've never. I mean, obviously, music is an interactive art form, but I've just never considered it in that way, like the interaction of the performance aspect of music. I think that's such a great answer. But yeah, what I'm going to press you on here a little bit is, and this is where it really is going to feel like an AA meeting or some shit, which, the three of us are members of, I'm going to break all of our anonymity at once.
Right.
Never respects the second A.
I literally could give a fuck about the second A. But anyway, but the okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask, do you have, because you're constantly like reworking things. You always talk about how you have to just put it down at some point and stop. Do you have trouble accepting older versions of yourself, whether it be musically or literally in your life? Are you wrestling with past versions of Alexis?
I don't think so. It's like kind of accept it and move on. And so there's work I've done that I'm not particularly proud of artistically. Mm-hmm. That it's not that I don't want to erase it or hide it, but I just don't. I did it. I was young and I'm not doing that anymore. But if someone can find value in a record I made in like 98 or something like that, then I think that's great. And, I'm happy that I created something at any point in my life that's of value to like a stranger or some shit. Your mom can always tell you how like, hey, honey, you're doing wonderful. I'm so proud of you. But like, to have somebody that you don't know, you'll never be aware of their feelings about something we've made as artists. That's a really kind of humbling and it's a great thing. So there's nothing I want to throw away. I mean, I have a VHS tape of 2 shows I performed that John, the drummer for Daughters, John and I were in a band. It's like really shitty kind of rap core, mid 90s band. Because it was the mid 90s, so how convenient and appropriate. But it's terrible. It's really bad, and I would love to digitize rid of the footage because I would like for people to see it. It's terrible and it is a bit embarrassing, but it's kind of fun that's what I was doing at the time, and long before a lot of people who listen to our band now, were alive. So. With poetry, I think maybe it's a little more embarrassing because there isn't a group to hide behind or like a band name or something where I can be a little more anonymous. Where my first book, I'm not really. Yeah, I'm glad I did it, and I'm happy it came out, and it's a great experience. And there's some poems in there that I enjoy, but I think as a overall work, I don't care for it, and I'd like to move on from that. People will ask me if it's available or where they can get it, and I just let them know it's out of print and that it won't be back in print again. So, and I'm not ashamed of the work. as much as I'm ashamed of other things I've done in my past. But it's just I'm happy to create and to be creative and to put things out that it's, like I said, in some way like resonates with the person and makes them feel, I don't know, happy or sad, or they connect to it in some way that's important to them.
Damn, this is fully an A. This is just fully an AA meeting. I love it. You're a programmed out fool. I just can feel you're imbued with the wisdom of the program.
So that's really mine.
Say that again.
This is where I do all my meetings, like right here in this office. So I'm
same.
Sick.
Sing my meeting today, so it's fine.
Perfect. So, and then last part of the 12-part question, you have a finished solo project that's sort of waiting in the wings for a while. Does that already feel dated? And, this is I'm asking this question for myself, basically.
Yeah. It feels, I do want to just kind of do the next thing at this point. And, it's hard. I recorded in March and then finished in April and then sat on it for several months. And then in November, I think I went back and re-recorded a couple, re-recorded one song entirely and then did some kind of touch-up work, I guess, and a couple other songs that, I'm glad I was able to do that, but that's just not normal. You don't sit on a record for that long and go back after, almost a year and then go and fix something. I mean, that's just, I've never had the opportunity to do that. But yeah, I'm excited for people to hear it and get it out, but it does seem dated and I'm a little kind of frustrated that now I'm finally going to get around to talking about it and kind of promoting it. And that just seems, this is what I was doing last year. And now it's, now I want to fucking talk about this other thing or talk about this other stuff I'm doing or think about this other project.
Yeah, I can relate. I have had an album sitting in the wings for 2 years now, and it's fucking exhausting.
Yeah. I should say 2 years is a long fucking time.
2 years is a long time. Started making it 3 years ago. Yeah,
pre-COVID, and then waiting through it now, and then fucking who knows when.
Yeah, I'm halfway finished with another one, and it just, I'm proud of those songs, and I can relate to them, and I'm not upset about sharing them, but it feels like a different part of my life creatively for sure. It's 3 years ago I started making it, so it's a long time for me.
Lucas, thank you for your share, bud.
Yeah, sorry. Would you like to ask me any questions about that, Alexis, while we're on the topic? Anyway, I can't help it. Okay, so I have a earlier era question where you kind of started this band, and I'm going to quote you here. You said, I remember starting a band with guys who didn't know how to play. No. Excuse me. Let me start over. I had this band where guys couldn't play, and it was a disaster. You started this band, and I'm going to quote you here, not where you said that, quote, none of us were oozing with talent. We were having fun. And I wanted to ask if there was in the early days of how you focused this energy where it was just like how do you focus an energy where guys aren't necessarily trained? Like is there like a flagpole that you all follow, or is it just like, how do you channel that raw energy? Do you even try? And how is it different now where it seems like everyone in the band is kind of an expert?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes down to being young, where you don't even know that you're not good or you're not talented or you don't belong. Like, you go to shows and you think you have a peer group, but it turns out you're 17 and everybody's 24, and somehow that's like they're old and wise. So, everything we were young and things were just kind of fresh, and we were taking part and or like trying to get in the door, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think like becoming part of a scene in and of itself is like really exciting and trumps kind of the output of the music, because I at the time wasn't thinking about how long I'd be able to do this or if this has legs or what's going to happen. And I just thought like, well, I'm just always going to play music, and it sounds like this right now, and who knows what will happen. Or I'm sure when I played hardcore music then I was like, yeah, I'm, hardcore for life or some kind of shit.
Right.
But, being young, it's just like, you just kind of work with what you have, and you hope someday be really talented and for everyone to like your band. But how do you make that happen? Like, you don't even have any fucking idea how to get there. So you just sort of think like, all right, well, let's go play some shows. I think bands go and play shows. So, you're pack into a cargo van or something, or like somebody's mom's like fucking Cadillac or some shit, and like drive the country in a Volkswagen or whatever, and just play basements and sleep on floors. And because you're just trying to like get out, you think like, well, this is what it is. This is what it's all about. And a lot of it's hanging out and having fun, and you don't realize you're poor and that you're hungry. It just like you don't care. And that's just something as great as it is. And as I can think back how wonderful and I miss that and all that shit. But like, I couldn't do that right now. I'm 41. I don't want to sleep on your floor after I played your fucking dirty, smelly basement. And like, we have like, everything smells like cat pee and shit. Like, I don't want to deal with that. So, it becomes work, and you start to really think about, how do I sustain this? Like, how do I justify being 40 years old and playing music now? When I was 17, who gives a shit, right? When I'm a 25-year-old alcoholic and drug addict, like, yeah, why don't I, like, who gives a fucking shit what I'm doing? But you eventually get to a point where you're, almost 40 or in your 40s, and your back and neck hurt, and you just think like, I don't know what the fuck else I'm going to do with my life. How do I make this sustainable, and how do I pay my rent? So it becomes a job more so in the sense where you have to think about how to keep going, because you never know. Like, we can do it like our next record, and maybe no one's going to give a shit, and it all falls apart, and who knows? I don't know. I'm trying to be maybe not optimistic. I don't know if I would never consider myself an optimist, but I just appreciate the way it is now, and that things are great, and I get paid, and that's wonderful. And I hope it continues, and I'll do my best to make sure it does, but not be crushed if the bottom falls out. It's just audiences are fickle, and there's a lot more to worry about and think about, and we can make it hard on ourselves and think about a legacy or that kind of nonsense, and that's just you just get in your own way with that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to keep things simple and get out and play and feel some fucking joy, because I feel like I'm maybe like 7 or 8 years removed or away from like having my spine fused, because it just everything hurts at this point.
Would you say that you're taking things one day at a time?
One could say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what you were just talking about relates kind of to this question that that I was hoping to ask, and it's something that we asked Kristen last week, about the current music economy, how, like, on top of the fact that artists are generally unable to make a living wage, there's also this expectation that they like visibly renounce the pursuit of material gain. So what we had asked her is along those same lines, that there seems to be this expectation of musicians and artists to like make a show of sacrificing themselves to their work, that like their creative output is imbued with this sense of like surplus value that comes from the artist sacrificing themselves as like a gift to the capitalist music economy. But do you find that there's an alternative type of power in sacrificing yourself to such confrontational and like anti-capitalist music?
I mean, I don't think I'm like an anti-capitalist type of musician or artist. I am more than happy to be paid for what I do because it takes all of my time and all of my being, and going on tour is a lot of fun, but I lose my life. My kids grow up while I'm away, and that's hard, and I want to be able to do that as a career, and not fear showing up and having like an eviction notice on my door, or the fucking locks changed, or something like that, or like show up my car's gone because like the fucking been repossessed or something. So I'm not. Is it like not okay to say that I'm not an anti-capitalist? I'm really okay with being paid for the work I do, and for myself paying other people for their work. I think that's pretty appropriate, and just sort of how society runs and operates. I mean, of course, it's like any system of power. It can be abused, and of course, people suffer. And that's we got to right that wrong at some point. But I think that just because the system's a little bit is broken doesn't mean it doesn't work necessarily. And yeah, I'm not. Again, I'm not. I couldn't do this if I didn't get paid. I couldn't go on tour for months, and my medical bills I'm paying. When I got to go to the fucking doctor, it's because I hurt myself on tour doing some stupid shit. It's like, they're not gonna like say, hey, this one's on the house, out you go. Like it's I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's all I got for that.
Well, like, my next question was kind of about like the relationship between art and capitalism. Are they inherently at odds? Can subversive and anti-capitalist music thrive under a capitalist system? But if you feel like you spoke on that, we can move on.
Well, it's just so like, I think it's really complicated, and I'm probably not. I mean, I'm not the right person to have answers for it. Like, I think it is a business. Art, music, art. It's all. If someone wants to pay 80 million or whatever for a Banksy, then fucking go ahead. If you feel something's worth that much to you, then go right ahead and pay that. And I don't think anybody making music or art should feel guilt about being paid for it or something like that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same like that, like kind of the old idea of like a band selling out or some shit. And it's like, if you feel good about what you're creating and you're doing it because you feel the drive and the need to create it, and you want to put it out and share with people, that's a totally genuine process and desire, and it's I think it's honest. But if you're making whatever kind of record and you don't give a shit about it and you're doing it for money or whatever, I mean, if you treat it like a job, it's a job. And I mean, maybe that's not bad either. I have no idea. I mean, if people enjoy the music we're making, who gives a shit why we're making it? Or someone like some fucking painting or sculpture, like who cares what they paid for it or why they want to see it or why they're looking at it? I mean, this is all, I don't know, maybe it's all, I mean, it's all fucking meaningless. Like none of it's going to last. And,
you won't get what you want.
Right, you won't get what you want. But I mean, like,
none of it's going to last.
Whomever paints whatever it is, they painted this thing, they painted this, and they felt this way about it, and then 100 years down the line, people they've misinterpreted it, and then so and so says no, that means this, and and people no, we feel that it means this other thing. Like, I mean, it's just nonsense. I mean, I'm happy to not go and fucking punch a clock, if I can do that by making records, and I'm happy to do that. I'm much happier writing, like sitting at this desk and writing, and writing my corny poems and lyrics and shit. And just like if I can live that way, that's fucking. I'm so happy to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. In checking out all your interviews and stuff, there's this pervasive world view that I can't tell. I think it's teeters on, like, I don't know, fatalistic or defeatist, or this like profoundly like what I think is rooted in what I've learned in AA, of this like let go of what you can't control sort of approach to things, where I hear you talking about things in this regard where you're saying, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to make what I'm going to make. Let the chips fall where they may, which is a holistic, what I see as a holistic approach to making things, making art. Do you identify with my share about you?
I do, and a lot of my views are like all program stuff. I mean, this is sort of, I've really accepted that I want everyone to love what I'm doing. I really do. I want everyone to fucking like me and everyone to think I'm great and all that shit. But like, I really have to, I accept and realize that that's just, it's unrealistic. It's unhealthy, and ultimately it's unnecessary. In the same way that like I don't need everyone to like me. I don't. I mean, sometimes I feel like I need everybody to hate me, as it turns out. But I'm like I said, I just want to make art and live like that, and it feels good that I can. I don't think I'm necessarily, fatalistic or maybe, but
I don't think so either. It just teeters on that sometimes in my interpretation of it. But I kind of want to skip this next question, Coley.
Okay. All right.
Take it away, bud.
Yeah, sure. That one about like all those conspiracy theories and shit that you're into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
Loch Ness monster and stuff.
Okay, we didn't have a question about conspiracy theories,
No.
but now I want to ask have you been going deep on any conspiracy theories? Is that what you were about to say?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
I was really interested in arguing with flat earthers a couple years ago, just because I had free time. I guess I found flat earth shit fascinating and totally ridiculous and insane.
I've got the man for you to talk to. My bandmate is like very deep into like arguing or like having discussions with flat earthers because his best friend, our friend growing up, is one. And so he was just like, sent him on this like wild spiral of like trying to understand the whole thing. And like, I don't know how far he's gotten, but I feel like he would be an interesting dude for you to talk to.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I don't understand it. I don't understand but I guess you're not supposed to. I just, what I think is really interesting, conspiracy theories are like they're conspiracies until and like there are actual fucking conspiracies. Like people talk about like the MK Ultra program and shit. I mean, that was real shit. Like the FBI was using like LSD and attempting mind control and shit. Like there's like interesting stuff. I mean, but sometimes it's just silly. Like
that's what I never understood, the disconnect. It's like if you want to know about conspiracy theories, like look up like the fucking war in Afghanistan, or like there's a million places where you can find like extremely deep conspiracies that are actually real.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was not my next question. The next question is more personal, and it's something that we talked to George about a couple weeks ago. But it kind of relates to my own experience that like basically I've found that like no matter the person you are today, there's always this like fetishization of the details of an artist's early life or like art from the artist's life of the period, like when they first emerged in public consciousness. So for me, I always have to face, narratives that began and as a result of my active addiction. So have you experienced this as well as someone who found sobriety and clean time in your career? Or is there part of you that wishes you could just leave biographical details out of the conversation entirely? Or is it, an important part of the context of the band?
I don't think it's really important as far as the band and our output or anything like that. But it comes up in interviews and people want to know personal details and so on. So I really do struggle with what's too much, and I'm the kind of person who is like ready to say fucking just anything, like whether I should say it or not, about like myself or some kind of shit, and it's like I have to be really careful with that a lot of the times. So my thing is like if I meet somebody or I know somebody, like anyone has a question about me or for me or some shit, like to feel free to ask. I'm not trying to like hide or like create a mystique or something like that, or like be dark or mysterious or anything like that. And it can be helpful for people, who I get, messages from people just like that I wrote something that means whatever it means to them, and how helpful that is. When for me, sometimes it's like I don't even know what that fucking song is about. Like I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that. Or, there's a fascination that people have, and I mean I've had the same interest in artists and growing up, and you want to know who the fuck they are, and like you want to get to know them and like absorb them. But it's, I think, difficult for people to, when they realize that like they're people that they've kind of idealized or have see as heroes, just are like, oh, these are regular fucking people, and they're
Totally
all fucked up. Yeah,
totally.
and especially as an artist, like to get on stage and like everyone's look at me, listen to what I have to say, watch what I'm gonna do. It's tough. It's like there's a certain type of person that I don't know, maybe it takes like a certain type to be good at it and to be really loud. I mean, I think like the way I do it is like a lot of my like behaviors of like self-harm and a lot of shit I've done on stage is like a reflection of my opinion of myself, and not a performance where this is like, I had a bit of like a nervous breakdown almost while we were in Glasgow a couple years ago, and I was singing and I was just going through a lot of shit, and I was singing this song, and it was about I fucking hate myself, and that's sort of the gist of this song, and my anxiety, and the crowd is singing, and I just had this moment where I thought, like, you just don't fucking care about me. You don't care about me. You're like, I am singing about how fucking much I hurt, and you're singing it to me. Like, this is sick.
Yeah, we're like, they overlook like the humanity in people. They just want artists to be this like one monolithic idea. They're just like, oh, this is what you are, and this is what I get out of it, and that's all I want. And like, there's no room for artists to like have human qualities, like complexity or contradiction or like things that every person experiences themselves,
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm like, I find myself more and more open to discuss a lot of those things now. And especially, I mean, like at that show, I just like sat on the end of the stage, put my fucking head in my hands, and like was just missing verses, and just kind of like, it's like, I just don't know what the fuck to do. Like, is this who I am? And it was just such a bad night and a bad performance. And afterwards, somebody was like, "Oh, that was fucking great, man. That was really." I was just like, I felt like, what? Like, I just died. Like on stage, I just fucking emotionally died. And people were like, some crazy shit I saw. And you think like, I am, like, what am I? Is this it? Is this as good as it's gonna get? So it's I just feel like I went on this tangent. I have no idea why we're talking about this, but
Well, it actually
yeah,
ties kind of into the next thing that I was going to ask about. If you
all
want
right,
to, if you want to move on, so
let's go.
just talking about the relationship, like the art as like a commodity, or like an artist as a commodity. I wanted to talk about just like growing and evolving as an artist in the context of the commodification of your art. So it's like, to me, commodification seems just to stagnate artistic growth, because it creates an environment where artists are incentivized to just create art that they feel the public will consume. Make the same art over and over. Play Magnolia, kind of thing. You're like pandering to this kind of like vague ideal, but it like disincentivizes you to evolve. But in your work, like even the title, you won't get what you want. It seems like a statement to listeners of the band in the context of that record. Like, we're continuing to evolve. So if you like our old stuff, then you probably won't get what you want. But so basically, like as an artist who's had a pretty profound evolution stylistically, what pushes you to evolve as an artist?
It's gonna be just boredom, maybe. It's where you get a little tired of playing the same thing, or sort of being the same person, or you can how many days in a row can you eat meatloaf type of thing. Eventually you just start to feel like this used to taste good and it just doesn't anymore. And that was like a big part of the transition for me, was that we would or that I would also, I guess, speak for myself and try not to speak for the group, but to challenge myself in some way. It just seemed like this is my trade, maybe, and you go from fighting amateur fights to fighting a little better opponents, and then eventually you want to fight for the title. So it sort of like seemed like the progression of things, and I've never been skilled at anything, and even as a singer, I'm not skilled. I'm not a good singer at all, and I have to accept that and kind of work with it and see what I can do with it, and how do I grow in that. It's just to the best of my ability, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, fuck it, I don't know. Progression is necessary for me. I mean, some bands don't do that or don't want to do that, or some artists want to just kind of like they find what works for them and kind of hang out there, and
mm-hmm.
If your output is good, you're making good shit, then cool. And if you're content and happy to do that, that's good. But I mean, personally, I can't tell you why. It just wasn't exciting to me, and I needed to do something else, I guess.
I'm going to quote you here, and this was in reference to going out on your solo venture. Being in a band is excruciating. Yeah, go ahead and unpack that for us.
I mean, it's true. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you've been in bands, and it's you're waiting for other people and working with other people, and not in a way where it's like you work at a shop and like you get scheduled opposite. You don't even have to deal with this other asshole, or maybe like every once in a while, maybe you got to work a day with somebody. But like when you're in a band, it's like everything you do like is really dependent on the other people involved, and it's exhausting, and I know I'm difficult and I can be exhausting myself. So someone has a bad day or a bad month or a bad year, and you're sort of forced to deal with that. It's definitely a relationship. It's not like a coworker. You live with people, and you have to talk to them fucking regularly, and like long conversations about money, and conversations about artistic expression, and like self and shit. And then like maybe you're having some issue, like you want to discuss, like I can't tell how many times I've like wanted to have a deep discussion about like something like political or socio-political in the band, and then someone makes like a fart joke, and I'm like, I can't even have a. It's just, and then you just sort of feel like, what the fuck is the. So it's personalities, man. It's so much that, and not that I'm like very highbrow and everyone's lowbrow. It's not what I'm trying to say, but like, sometimes you're on some vibe, and like people just aren't feeling it, and they're want to do their other thing, or someone's having a bummer on the tour and they just like sit in their bunk, and then you start to feel like this motherfucker's just in their bunk all day, or like someone skips sound check, which would be me like every fucking time. I never want to do it. And it'd be like, oh, this prick went to go get tattooed, and fucking we're all sound checking. And it's like, it's like, you got to figure out how to work with all that shit. And it is painful. It is fucking painful.
Yeah, it's a dysfunctional family for sure.
Yeah, I never know how to talk to my therapist about my bandmates. I'm like, my co-worker, it's like, what do you say? My family?
It's all of those things. It's like it's all that shit at once. It's not like you're dating someone. You're dating someone. You don't have to like talk about fucking like complaints about the artistic direction of a record. It's like it is its own thing. And like being in a band, it like encompasses all of that. It's sort of like that diagram of all of these circles of like work, relationship, family, and like stuff. It's like when they all kind of come together in the center. It's that's what being in a band is. Like it's all that shit at the same time.
What's something you couldn't do in the band context that you now get to do in the solo context?
Well, I just get to decide without needing to run it by anybody, and that was like, it can be a pain in the ass when you want to talk about merch or what we're going to do a tour and like who's it going to be with and all that, and now it's like I get to decide. I'm going to do this, or I want to do this thing, or this sounds fun. I want to go. I don't need to worry about like, well, does so-and-so like this band? Like if we take them on tour with us, are we going to like,
sure.
I don't need to even consider that shit. So I can do whatever I feel like doing. And there's no waiting around for anybody else or working around their schedule. And as far as like the recording process, the way I like to record is sort of more like in a live setting and more improvised, where Daughters is everything is thought out and planned, and it's a bit it can be a bit much for me, who's just kind of like I'm a like do everything last minute, You
don't like the studio process, right?
I didn't ever. I always really disliked it, but I think it was more I didn't want to be under the microscope, because I've always felt really insecure as an artist, and as a singer I've never felt. I've always felt really comfortable as a performer, but never as a creative person, especially when I'm surrounded by people who are really talented. So when I'm sitting by myself and writing, I feel comfortable, or if I'm on stage performing, because I can admit that I do it very well. And it's like one of the few things in my life that I'm like very comfortable and proud of myself to be able to do. Like I perform very well. And I don't think it's like my ego or me being like self-centered or any of that shit. Like, I put a lot into it, and I get a lot out of it, and other people get a lot out of it. So I can see that and acknowledge it in a non like selfish, arrogant way. But so I hide a bit more in the studio. But this solo record was just like a completely different experience, and I wanted to make it what I've always wanted the writing or the recording experience to be, and that it was just we're gonna like try a bunch of shit, see what happens. I got a bunch of crap from Home Depot and the dumpster, and I want to like see what I can make with this. And we'd send John into the room to like play the drums for 15 minutes and just see what you got out of there, and then we'd listen back, and Seth and I would find kind of really interesting beats, and then we work with those and take them out, and it was really fun. It was like great to sit there and be creative in the moment and not overthink it and get really stressed and have 20 different demos for one song, and then by the time it's done you just think like, well, this just shit doesn't work, let's just go back to where we started.
Totally.
Classic. It's really exhausting. So I was really looking forward to just getting in the room and letting everybody like run with whatever idea they had and seeing if it works. And if it works, that's great. And if it didn't work, that's cool. Like, let's just keep going. And it was great. I loved it.
So speaking of the songwriting process, you know, I feel like for me last year was just musically, it was an exercise in just like making do with what we have. You know, as a band, we can't meet up and write together, so we like adopted this kind of like splintered approach to songwriting with just like a shitload of ideas getting thrown onto this shared Dropbox folder, and then like individually each person would listen to it and process it. But you know, reading about the process behind making You Won't Get What You Want, it seems like you were already on that boat. So can you just talk a little bit about, you know, the process of writing a daughter's song?
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Nick will have a lot of different things. He'll have a lot of stuff going on, and he'll put it in the Dropbox, and he may say, "Hey, I really want to. If you guys can check out this thing I just did, I really like it." And you know, we'll find some shit that works for everybody, and then he'll kind of refocus onto that, and then you know, him and John will talk a lot about it, and I will just sort of wait until, you know, they're maybe 60% done or something, and then I'll start to give my opinions and what works for me, and you know, Nick is really particular, and we I think clash in a lot of ways, and probably like the writing process is a way. Not that one of us is right or wrong. I think we just, as I talked about, like the way I want to make a record and the way Nick wants to make a record are a bit different. So, but I suppose it works for us because ultimately the end product, to just like take something, a piece of art that I worked really hard on and call it a product like I just did. It's just like so gross and slightly bummed that I just did that.
We know what you mean.
But yeah, you know, the end result it's you know, it did really well and people really enjoyed it, and it was a huge achievement for us. So it works. It's not easy. It's not a lot of fun. I was hoping we wouldn't make another record like that, but then, you know, fucking COVID shows up and life is what it is. So we were a bit prepared. Oddly, I mean, you know, not oddly, because this is like a crazy time it's been. So we should have been more prepared for it in the mechanics of like not being able to be together and to work that way. But I think that this just really took a toll on a lot of us emotionally and mentally, and we've done not nearly the amount of work we really were hoping to get done this past year. So we were, yeah, like I said, should have been prepared. On paper, would have been prepared for a pandemic, but as it turned out, we just fucking can't handle it. So, but who can? I don't know.
Can relate. I'm going to quote you again, and the quote is, "I don't think I use this band as a source of expression in the traditional sense lyrically." Can you unpack what you mean by that for us? I can give you more context if that's helpful.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you were talking about how you don't write like confessional lyrics necessarily, or like a love song. You don't write in this direct way. You kind of write from a character's perspective or a broken narrative, and you leave ambiguity. But if this totally isn't jarring your memory, or you don't remember what you meant by that, we will move on to the next question.
It's fine. Yeah, I mean, as far as daughters, it was. I think maybe early on, I was attempting to talk about personal feelings and things and people in an abstract way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I just really started to embrace a lot more like songwriters that were writing kind of in a, and I think I was reading a lot, probably like I was reading a lot more, and everything became more literary, and I wanted to talk about, you know, have characters and situations that weren't personal, so that they are in a way like more appealing to people, or someone doesn't need to have that experience to relate to the song. And you know, I think Nick and I were talking about the lyrics to Guest House, and he said like how kind of lowbrow it seemed. He's like, I don't know, man, you wrote "Let Me In," and I was like, yeah, I guess. And things like, but you see, like when we play it, he's like, people are fucking, everybody's singing it. And, I don't, I
Sorry, what do you mean you wrote "Let Me In"? Like talking about the lyric? What is?
Yeah. When I wrote that, writing that lyric, it was sort of like I think he thought he was trying to say that he thought it was like, I don't know, man. There's not a lot going on here. There's not a lot to say. And then I felt like, I mean, that's sort of the beauty of it is that it's it's multi-purpose. Whatever you need it to mean, it can mean that. And I try to write a bit of my own self that is like a lot of anxiety and paranoia and fear and kind of anger and all that sort of silly teenage bullshit. But as an older man now,
no, "Let Me In" the context of that song is chilling. I think it's, I don't see it as lowbrow or cheap.
Right. When I think that once it has context and it works, but I'm not trying to be, I don't try to be like too smart or use a big like an orchid song, you know what I mean? Where like everything is like it's like Nietzsche quotes and all this shit, and you're kind of like, yeah, I mean, this is cool, but it kind of seems obnoxious, and it's almost like you're insulting me by my intelligence, because I don't understand what you're talking about.
That's not who you are.
Right. It's I'm not that bright. So,
neither am I.
Yeah. But I just want it to be like sort of accessible for everybody, and to, that nobody needs to read my lyrics with a thesaurus handy or something like that, or like a dictionary or whatever. Yeah. So I guess I don't write in the traditional sense where, love and that kind of, which I suppose is to me lazy, or like pop music or whatever, is sort of, but I do want to talk about a very simple, like basic human emotion, but on a more, not profound level, but maybe a little more disturbing and deeper, or like kind of lost within itself in some way. I don't really know what it is I'm saying, maybe.
No, it makes sense to me, and it's dramatized for me at times. So on a more primal level, jujitsu. What is it about the practice of getting choked out by your own gi, or publicly 69ing another human being for extended periods of time, that is so meditative and profoundly rewarding?
Wow. For me, it was like, I got into it, and it brought me like really close, not obviously in a physical.
It brought you close.
It brought me close to other people, but it made me really care about people's like emotional and physical development, and like nurturing their will and ability to grow. It's oddly like spiritually, because there's a lot, like you get broken down on the mat, like somebody's just like kicking your ass, and you got to keep going. And it's easy to get up and say like, this is just not for me. Like I don't need another person like stepping on my face, and to kind of tough it out, and it lent, not lent, but like gave to me like a real comfort that I had never had in my own body, where I always felt like I've always been really lanky and weak. And when I started training, I was like, oh, I am like, I feel kind of okay. Like I feel okay walking late at night now. Like I'm not really like worried when a car load of guys drive by me, call me a or something. Like this is like I'm not afraid and I'm comfortable right now. And this is like, it gave to me like some like a sense of more of like a connection with myself. Like, whereas a singer, I feel like my instrument is internal. It's like part of my body. And then to have something that is physical that I could in some way defend myself or feel connected in my body, or like an understanding of my body and leverage, and to know that, like, you know what, like what this person can do to me is like not as bad as what's this much larger, more experienced person did to me for like an hour on Tuesday night.
Right.
I've been in the fire, and I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. So, there's a strange sense of camaraderie that I did not expect.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it got to a point, like, you know, when we had finished this self-titled record, and we had a big argument, and when we took that hiatus or broke up or whatever, it was like we had a tour coming up, and we were arguing about a tour, whether we were going to take it or not, and I knew that it meant more to me to stay and train with these people that I was training with, that I felt more connection to like supporting them, being supportive of them and what they need, than I did to like go play music and be in a band and be in this like really contentious, uncomfortable situation with people who like didn't get along with. And I just thought, like, I don't want to walk away from this thing that's like giving me like a really wonderful sense of self and like and feeling committed to these other people, to go do this other thing that just doesn't feel right. That isn't making me happy. And that was kind of when I said, like, this is just, you know, I'm all done. And jiu-jitsu and boxing all like really gave me that like ability to just say, like, you know what, this shit isn't working for me, then I don't need it.
All right, important question then.
All right.
I'll give you some context. I'm 5'9".
Okay.
I'm 130 pounds. I'm a third degree white belt in jiu-jitsu. Could you break my guard?
I mean, anybody can break anybody's guard.
Yeah, I know.
It's all about.
Yeah, I know. I love jiu-jitsu. It's awesome.
It's the best. It's the best shit ever. I miss it so much. I had mentioned, I think before we started, or maybe during this interview, I have no idea I talk so much.
No. During the interview.
Yeah, my shoulder injury like has taken me out of it, and I really want to get back. And it's just I'm gun shy and like nervous on the mat. I'm like, oh man, that's how I'm gonna get hurt again, or somebody else is gonna get hurt if I'm like not committing. And I miss it so much.
Yeah, it's a culty scene with a lot of love and camaraderie in my experience.
I mean, that's human. That's tribalism, right? Like we find our tribe, and that's we like overcommit to it most often. But there's so much to get out of it. It's deeper than like putting like a fucking safety pin in your nose and like and hang up with kids, right? And like getting drunk at the parking lot 7-Eleven. Like there's something to be gained and to learn about yourself and other people, and then like in a support system. It's similar to like what I get from like meetings and shit, where it's like, totally. Yo, I know like people in this, like whether it's the AA room or the training, like in the gym, it's like these people give a shit about me and what happens to me, and like want me to succeed and get better. And you know, you don't find that you rarely find it in music, I think, where it's because it's such a business now.
Yeah. Well, it's no big secret that you love Scott Walker. Scooter Walker. And one of my favorite stories about Scott seems relevant to this discussion that you may or may not know, but I'm going to tell for the sake of our viewers. Okay. He's presenting his finished album to the head of his label at the time. I can't remember what label he was on. And I think it was Tilt was the album. And head of the label comes in, and they're listening to the record, and he's got his baseball cap down over his eyes, and they're blasting the record up on the big speakers. And they listen through to the whole thing that way. And there's set of big speakers and a set of small speakers. And the head of the label, after it's over, doesn't really know what to say, and ends up saying, well, can we listen to it again one more time? So I says, yeah, sure. And they start playing it again. They're blasting it up on the big speakers. Or he says, can we listen to it again, but on the smaller speakers and turn down a little bit? And Scott says, yeah, okay, sure. And they start listening to it on the smaller speakers, and they're halfway through, and Scott pauses it. And he goes, you know, I'd really like to put it back up on the big speakers, because this is almost certainly the last time I'll ever listen to it. and I just want to remember it this way.
Yeah.
And something about that just reminds me of you and this discussion, and in reading your interviews with you, that sort of mindset of, I'm making this thing, I'm going to move on to the next thing. This is kind of, it's footprints in the sand. Does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, I would never compare myself or put me anywhere near Scott Walker.
No, but you can relate to the story about him.
Right, but I want to be there.
Yeah.
Someday. Yeah, I don't know all the words to this record, and I have to learn them so that I can play them. It's a thing I don't really like to do, to listen multiple times and to I remember singing. We had taken a break, and I had forgotten the words to something, and I had to listen to some song on "You Won't Get What You Want" or something, and then because I just couldn't fucking remember the words for the life of me. And when I was listening, I thought, oh shit, I have been singing this completely differently, and I mean essentially wrong. But there's like I think when you perform something live, there's a progression. It just kind of happens that just, it seems like natural. It's like fluid, and you start to sing things differently. You find a different timing that's more appropriate, because in the studio, or leading up to the studio, there's a lot of pressure, and you probably make decisions that in hindsight we're like, oh, this really didn't work. It's a little bit off, and it doesn't sound as natural. You don't have the benefit of hindsight. So I think things will take a turn somewhere when it's being performed live for a bit, or when you hear it again, you think, oh, it should be like this. Now that I'm hearing it again, you become more familiar with it, and you start to make changes without realizing you're making them. So yeah, I don't listen. I don't listen like ever afterwards, and that's Kristen listens to her records a bit to like really get comfortable with them afterwards, and I'm just like, I fucking haven't listened to I've listened to my record once all the way through, and it was when we got the masters, and then when I got the test presses. And honestly, I listened to the test press and fell asleep through a couple songs. And I was just like, yeah, sure, it sounds good. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, I'm probably the worst person to take the lead on it when it's like, hey, how does this sound? Does it need to be? I'm just like, I'm sure it's fine. Like, I'm sure everyone did their job. Let's put it out. Let's move. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I should probably work on that
I don't
myself, but.
Well, speaking of Scott Walker, we have our one segment from this show where we will name Scott Walker songs or Magic the Gathering cards, and you have to pick, is this a Scott Walker card or a Magic the Gathering card? Scott Walker song or Magic the Gathering card?
I'm a little nervous.
It's a mean game. We're trying to trick you. I love Scott Walker too. I would probably get some of these wrong, and I have no Magic cards. It's a mean game. I just want to preface it with that.
It's constructed to make me look foolish. Is that what that's
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. Up first, we have Pilgrim.
That's a Scott Walker song.
Scott Walker off Bish Bosh. Number 2, Time Operator.
Is it Magic card?
That is Scott Walker from 1970, early Scott Walker. We got Angel of Sanctions.
Oh, that's terrible. I hope that's a Magic card.
That's a Magic card.
Yeah, that's not good.
All right, we got Black Sheep Boy.
That's got to be a Scott Walker song.
Yeah, that's what is that, Scott 2? The Cockfighter.
That's Scott Walker. Yeah.
Scott Walker. That was on Tilt.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Battle at the Bridge.
Battle of the Bridge. That's is that a Scott Walker song?
That is a Magic card. I don't know what it is though. Lucas made this one.
Sounds like a Scott Walker song though.
Does sound like a Scott Walker song.
Or the band or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Plastic Palace People.
That's Scott Walker.
Scott Walker.
No.
Okay. Preordain.
That could go either way, I think. I can't think of the Scott Walker thing, so it must be a Magic
card.
You skipped one, bud.
I know. I'm skipping some of the. I'm skipping your less good work here.
Okay, all right.
Some of these are pretty good. I don't know. Okay, Creeping Chill.
I don't think is that Magic?
Magic.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait Until Dark.
Scott.
Killing it. Okay. Seal of Fire.
I'm not familiar with that. So Magic?
It's Magic. The Seventh Seal.
Oh, yeah, that could go either way. Is it Scott? Yeah.
You're doing better than like anybody. Okay.
A lot of there's a fair amount of guesswork going on here too, so don't give me too much credit.
Path to Exile.
Magic.
It's Magic. Song of Freelise.
That's terrible. I hope that's Magic. That's bad.
Yeah.
That is Magic. Freelise. And then lastly we have Lullaby.
Scott.
I love that you hate that so much. That you hate the two Magic cards.
That's a Scott song, yeah.
It's a Scott song.
Yeah.
How do you do, Luke?
Well, you cut down my list pretty significantly here, so I'm not sure how many are left, but he got 2 wrong out of however many he did. So very
Nice.
strong.
Very strong.
Strong showing.
Thank you for doing that to taking a lot out to make me look better.
No, actually, the ones I took out are the ones that I thought were too easy.
Angels of Ashes.
Angels of Ashes. Yeah, that one could work. Okay. So I wanted to ask you about The Bachelor. You watched The Bachelor, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we spoke a few weeks ago with Kristen about like the evolving culture of The Bachelor, from like the origins of just like this like, bro, she's so hot culture, to one of just like this extremely weaponized wokeness where just every conversation is filtered through like layers upon layers of like woke speak jargon, you know, like taking responsibility, sharing your truth, like I hear you when you say this. But like that is kind of a betrayal of like what the ultimate, you know, truth of The Bachelor is, which is just like, you know, institutionalized gaslighting, exploitation, trauma. You know, the whole point of the show is that everybody loses except for one person, you know. But I wanted to ask you more about, you know, built within these failures is like this chance for redemption, right? Like after what I imagine is like a bunch of therapy and coaching and whatever, the villains and like, or the agents of chaos from the show can show up in paradise with like this new vocabulary of like performative woke speak, and they have the option basically to either offer an amends to the viewing public or just like double down and like own their behaviors. So do you relate to these agents of chaos and are bummed when they return with their performative apologies? Or if not, like what type of characters do you tend to root for in The Bachelor? And in general, what draws you to the show?
Well, what draws me to the show is that there is no one, not a single person, no matter how good they seem, is in any way honorable. Everyone's a show. Everyone is a fucking disaster. Everyone is selfish. They're there to be famous. They aren't there to find love. Just the notion that we have selected these 30 men or women for Bachelor or for the Bachelor or Bachelorette, and you're just by fucking chance, your soulmate
Right.
is just fucking silliness. And having an offshoot like Paradise, which I fucking love. I like Paradise more than I like
Same.
Bachelorette.
Why?
It's because it's like, the chaos is just like brilliant. Like when Chad Johnson shows up and then like gets in a fight, like it's like fuck you, Chris Harrison is like shouting about us. It's just like it's wonderful. It's wonderful to watch, and the way they pit these people against each other, and then like they have like people waiting in them, and oh, these people have found each other and they're in love, and then they like bring someone's ex onto it. And, I don't know. It's just like it's so fucking vicious.
Yes.
And in a real life situation, I would find that appalling and upsetting. But because I think it's such a grotesque, hideous environment, and that everyone is there for the wrong reasons, and
they're always talking about he's not here for the right reasons.
Yeah, classic line.
All there for the wrong reasons. There's not a single person who is. If they were like, hey, we have this experiment we're going to keep in this house, and you're going to date like 30 people. It's not televised, and you don't get paid. You're not going to pick up like hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers. Nobody would fucking do that. Everyone would be like, I gotta like go to work tomorrow. I'm not
yeah.
Like no one is there for the right reasons. They're all there for the wrong reasons. And the villains are often like the most entertaining.
And they're the ones who expose that,
Yeah, because they just don't give a shit. And they're like kind of really honest about what a fucking garbage human being that they are. And I don't support them or root for them or hope for the best for them. But I just enjoy watching the villains because they just, it's so like fucking delicious to just watch these people just like tear each other up in this really sick way. But only because, again, if this was like out on the street or someone I knew, I'd be like, yo, this is fucked up. Like, really, you're dating this guy, he's dating 29 other people other than you. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And they were like, well, he loves me and I love him. And we went parachuting and canoeing. And I'd be like, you fuck, what? Like, that's just not, it's bullshit, And I only enjoy watching it because everybody knows what they're getting into. There's a podcast that called Game of Roses that Chris and I let's do. It's like brilliant. And there's something they've titled Sluician Protocol, which is like created by this character, Anna Sluice, who said like, we all knew what we were signing up for. And that's it. It's like, everybody knows what they're doing there. They all act like they don't know. And they're like, oh, we don't fucking move. And the people like, they don't like, who's the villain and who's the fucking nice person and who's the single mom and all shit. Like they all know it's all there. People are stupid, but people aren't really that stupid when you've been watching the show for over, like 2 decades or something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was like verbal diarrhea, but it's like, I'm so into this like experiment and how fucking sick it is. And I feel no sympathy for the people involved. I think it's like fucked up what they do to them and like some of that shit, but it's like, again, you know what you're getting into. Like you're there for fucking fame and clout, and you're not there for love. If it wasn't televised, you wouldn't be there.
It's psychotic if you are there for love. Like it's just it makes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, like what do people really believe? Like, oh, this is my soulmate, the one person on TV. Like that's how you're fucking gonna meet somebody. Like, well, I tried the dating scene in Tinder and I fucked everybody. Like I don't know.
I'm just gonna narrow it down to 30 people now.
Maybe it's this guy on TV. I don't know. It could be me. So it's just like it's complete silliness. I love it.
Psychotic.
I love that take. Thank you so much for that.
Well, Cole, do you have one more question here, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that you did touch on earlier, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. It's about, your live shows and like, spaces. It's, basically, your live shows tend to be, a cathartic, confrontational, like visceral space. But from your perspective as the music world shifts to one that the writer Liz Pelly described, in which a tech-enabled monoculture erodes local connections, all the while downplaying the significance of permanent physical spaces to community building. So, like, for you, if these local community connections are eroded and as venues continue to close down, what is lost for you as an artist?
as a kind of like a, you know, a lack of it, like a hobo, just kind of wandering in and like all smelly from the road, and I'm there for the night and then I vanish. I mean, not a lot for me, but you know, it's probably more of a question of like the individual. I'm the wrong person. I don't go to shows. I mean, I live in central Pennsylvania. I wouldn't know where the nearest show is aside from like Philly or Pittsburgh. You know, as venues close, I assume a lot of us are going back to like playing VFW halls and shit like that. And, you know, I don't think that's the worst thing. You know, we'll see how it goes. I think it's all going to recover and it'll come back. And if, you know, people's community, I think all communities need some work and you know, some like a space for everyone like to go to shows and have experiences and to feel safe and you know, I think I think there was it's probably it goes up and down. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like there's going to be times where not a lot of places to play. I mean, I remember there's a point in the city when I was in Providence, it was like, there seemed like a lot of places to play. And then all of a sudden, like they've closed down all of the art spaces and and then they're like, this club burned down and shit. And you're like, where the fuck are we going to play? And then things start to open up. I think things come in waves and you know, the supply meets the demand or, you know, it's just that's just the nature of things. And when we're all out playing, like right now, I mean, yeah, they're closing shit down and it's getting harder to find places. It's going to be hard to find places to play for a while. But once we're all out looking for shows again, someone's gonna step up and say like, well, we got to open this place in fucking Denton, you know, and we got to open this other place over here. It's like we got to get people in here, like, you know, it's just a matter of time. I mean, I don't know. I'm not. I'm probably the wrong person because I don't want to leave my house for anything, you know. So I don't know. Did I even answer that question?
Yes.
Great.
Well, in wrapping up, I feel, and you tell me if I'm projecting or if I'm, you know, coming up with something in the tea leaves that's not there. But I've found a theme with you where there's, you know, there are your early experience going to shows that, you know, weren't necessarily about going to see a band so much as it was going to be with people. And in referencing your own band, you know, we weren't cool. We just wanted to hang out to be accepted. There's jujitsu. There's AA. There's all the way up to now literally screaming, "Let me in," on Guest House. I see you as someone who is constantly seeking and even fostering community. And you know, even through the anger and the despair, I sometimes find that those two things can be unifiers, some of the most powerful unifiers. Does any of this resonate with you?
Yeah, I would like to be very independent, you know, and you know, there are times where, of course, I feel like I've done something stupid or whatever, and I just think like, you know what, I'm just not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to go anywhere. It's shit. I'm just like going to be quiet from now. And then then I'm like, I felt like that before we had this interview, and now I'm sitting here and like, you know, having a good time talking to you. So that's like, I don't know. I mean, that's probably like a self-analysis that I'm not really prepared to deal with or capable of. I'll have to like that, you know, ask my therapist.
Okay, well, I'm gonna claim it here. I'm gonna say definitively that you foster community.
I mean,
you're diagnosed with fostering community. We're sorry. There's no cure.
I'll add that to the already long diagnosis. So.
Well, Alexis Marshall, thank you for coming on Thoughtseize Interviews. Is there anything, we've talked about the new album that isn't really announced yet, so we're not going to talk about it too much more. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you'd like to close on before Cole tells us how we did with this really atrocious Magic the Gathering deck during the interview?
I don't know if I have anything to promote. Oh, I'm doing I've got a new book I'm writing. I'm starting this kind of like small publishing thing. So it's called End of the Mountain, and I'm gonna start hopefully get my stuff out, but other writers that I know and admire and who are occasionally saying, I wrote this book, I don't know what the hell to do with it. And I think, well, maybe I can do something with it, and try to find myself in that position. Because as I said before, like
that sounds like community to me.
My body, but my body's not gonna last much longer, so I gotta find something else to.
Well, you should send him the script for your one-man play, your one-man show.
True.
I would happily read that.
If it existed, it would be tight. I would read it too.
I don't know what else to put out. I just my own book.
Here you are supporting and fostering community, even for Cole's one-man show.
Non-existent one-man show.
Well, we're gonna thank you for coming on here. I want to thank Deranged Strangler for our theme song, which we're about to play right now. I want to thank everyone for hanging out in chat. We'll be back next Monday at the same time, and yeah, that's all I got.
I'll give just a little rundown how we did. We did really bad, probably worse than we've done on any other episode. We went four losses, one win, and our one win was to somebody who got bored with our deck being really slow and just like conceded. Deck is trash. No fault to anybody except for myself. Us, yeah. So that's it. Thanks, Lex, so much for coming on the show. Thanks to everybody for hanging out on Twitch and giving some feedback in the chat. Closing words, Lucas?
That's all. We've done it.
Okay.
We did it.
All right. Respect you all. Good night, everybody.